Good morning, everybody. So we'll start with some thank yous to start off our day to Falmouth TV for taping this for rebroadcast. For Jill, you have a phenomenal director here for having us here every month. I really look forward to it. I really appreciate all your support. We have a couple of things that are coming up I wanted to tell you about. One, September 22nd, it's a Monday night. At 6 o'clock, most likely at the Lawrence School. We're going to have basically a discussion about the new police station to get your input and explain that. Hopefully you all can make it. We were originally going to have it at the library, but we felt it's too small of a venue and we don't want to turn anyone away. And this is a very expensive project and it's a very important project because we really need to get out of that building. It's an antiquated, cramped building. I'd also like to thank all those that came and visited us this summer, and I want to thank them for leaving because you can take a left-hand turn now, which is nice. So we look forward to really enjoying, September, October. We've been very busy at the police department. I have 3 of my road dog sergeants here today. Proud to say I promoted all 3 of them. They're going to talk about use of force, but they're very busy on their shifts assignments. And you actually have all 3 shifts here today. Sergeant Cardoso's on day shift. You have evening shift. Sergeant Massey and Sergeant DuPont is on the midnight shift, hanging over today to really talk to you about tasers. Town meeting's coming up in November, and we've got a bunch of warrant articles on there. One of them is to replace our tasers. They're antiquated. They don't support them anymore. It was kind of a little bit of a surprise to us, and they're very expensive. These really nice firearms for us, upgraded firearms. They'll talk about those, but we want to make sure that we don't have to use them in certain situations. So we need to have less lethal options, and they'll talk about that. That's that red shotgun there. That's a less lethal beanbag round. They'll explain that to you. But like I said, things are going really well. Believe it or not, we're still very busy, even in the off season. They're building it, and people are coming. You've got 1,100 new housing permits. And, it's with that growth, you're going to see me asking for personnel. You're going to see me asking for a new station and equipment upgrades, because these folks deserve the very best, and the folks that work for them deserve the very, very best in training and equipment. And I said this to them today, and I'll say it to all of you. I'm on my 5th department, right? I've been doing this month. I start my 38th season of being a police officer. My rank just happens to be chief, 13 of those years as chief. Our firearms team, our unit, is probably one of the best in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I mean, the training that they provide your officers, to include me, is unreal. And the amount of help they gave me as we transitioned to red dots in our pistols, I'm an old dog, and they're teaching me new tricks, and they were very, very patient. And on the range, I'm not the chief. I'm a student. And they're the boss. So I really appreciate them. Next month, we're going to have our state reps here. And then in November, I'm going to have the architect firm here, the project manager firm here, and our chairman of the building committee here to answer any questions, to put on a presentation. I decided November because it'll be right before town meeting. And thank you again, Falmouth TV. They can play it for rebroadcast until town meeting. It's a very, very important project. And I realize it's a very expensive project. When I took this job here, it was mission critical that my wife and I moved to Falmouth. And why is that? I'm going to ask for certain things, and I can even look at everyone in the eye in this room and say, I've got skin in the game. That if the taxes have to go up a little bit for this station, my taxes are going up a little bit too. And like you, I've got responsibilities and everything else, and I know it's a lot I'm asking. I know, but I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't absolutely critical. That place is awful. That's all I can say. And I'll close with, the day that I came, the board affirmed me, and I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more. They asked, what does the chief think of the station? He was appalled, and I am appalled. It's an embarrassment. They deserve so much better. You deserve so much better. And I look forward to getting this project approved. And being here for as long as it takes to get it built. I'd like to finish what I've started. So that being said, I've talked way too much. So I'm going to turn it over to these fine folks, and I'm telling you, absolute rock stars. all three, all my sergeants. Just a great group of people. Very proud to say I work alongside and lead with some of the very finest law enforcement professionals in the Commonwealth.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sergeant Cardozo. I've been with the town of Falmouth for the last 11 years. Just a bit about me is I'm a defensive tech instructor, I'm a firearms instructor, and a taser instructor. So I participate in all three disciplines when instructing new officers and veteran officers about how to defend themselves, how to defend you guys on the streets, and how to keep everybody safe and try to de-escalate the situation so everybody gets to go home safely. So the chief asked me to speak briefly about use of force. Use of force is kind of a very broad topic, and the recruits in the academy, this is like a multi-week long course. I'll try to keep it a little shorter for you guys. So I made a little PowerPoint just to help condense things down for us. So the first thing, see if this works. There you go. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is force? For us in the law enforcement field, force is defined as the least amount of physical effort required to compel somebody to place them under custody or to control them or to de-escalate the situation, right? And there are times that we can use force and times that we can't, but everything is depending on the situation. Most of the time, the level of force we utilize is based on the individual's actions, right? If somebody's being compliant and cooperating with us, we're not going to use any force. We're going to talk to them, and de-escalate the situation so everybody gets to go home and everybody's safe. But if the individual decides to escalate the situation, then we have to match that escalation with a certain level of force if we're unable to de-escalate. But our number one priority is to de-escalate. So even in our policy, in the state law, it states that we must attempt to de-escalate the situation whenever feasibly possible. If it's not feasibly possible, or if we fail to de-escalate the situation, then we can utilize force for certain criteria, such as placing somebody under arrest or to detain an individual during the investigation of a crime. We can utilize force to prevent an individual from escaping custody, and we can use force to defend ourselves and defend others. Those are the primary times that we are utilizing force. The big thing about force when it comes to law enforcement is it must be reasonable. So back in 1989, there was a United States Supreme Court case. It was Graham v. Connor. So this case, the result was that the force used by an officer must be reasonable, right? It's not necessarily what's perceived as right or wrong, it's what's reasonable for the situation. When it comes to judging a use of force, we must place ourselves in the shoes of that officer. We can only utilize the information that that officer had at the time of the incident. So we can't use 20/20 hindsight to judge whether force was reasonable or not. We must place ourselves in that position of that officer with the information he was given, right? So just a quick example of that, right? If somebody pulls out a black firearm and points at an officer, the officer is allowed to use force to defend himself and defend others. Later that day, we found out that that black firearm was a BB gun. Well, we can't use that information to judge the use of force because at the time of the incident, the officer didn't know it was a BB gun. It appeared to be a real firearm. Therefore, the officer used reasonable force to match that level of force. And the big thing is we have to make quick decisions in split seconds. So we only have a very limited amount of information at the time. And in order to keep everybody safe, we must make that quick decision to prevent any further injury to the public and to ourselves. So I guess I'll give you guys a little background on Graham v. Connor, and I'll let you guys decide whether or not the force utilized in that case was reasonable. So Connor was a police officer in Charlottetown, North Carolina. He was patrolling an area of the town that was a high crime area, and 2 days prior to him being there was an armed robbery at a convenience store. So Connor's doing his patrol, and he's kind of watching that same convenience store that was hit a couple of days ago. While on shift, he sees a vehicle rapidly pull into the convenience store, slam on the brakes. The passenger runs out of the car, runs inside, spends about 25 to 30 seconds inside of the store, runs back out into the car, and the car takes off at a rapid rate of speed. Based on Connor's, experience, he believes he just observed a robbery taking place. He conducts a motor vehicle stop, stopping that vehicle. He requests a backup unit to support him because, based on his perspective, he just observed a potential violent crime take place right in front of him. As he does his car stop, the passenger, who is Graham, runs out of the vehicle and he starts running around the vehicle. He's talking, but his words are not making sense. His speech is slurred. The words he's using, the officer can't really understand them, so he's not sure what's going on. Connor doesn't know if he's under the influence of drugs, of alcohol. So once his backup officer arrives, they decide to detain Graham. So they take a hold of Graham's arms and try to detain him by handcuffing him. Graham's thrashing around, he's pulling away from Connor, so they have to force his arm behind his back to place the handcuffs on it. In the process, they have to pin him against the car to keep him from escaping. In this process, Graham ends up hitting his head against the car once he's being pinned on the vehicle, and then they bring him to the back of the cruiser to secure him in the back of the police cruiser. Graham again refuses to get in the cruiser, so they have to force him into the cruiser to secure him. Once this is done, Connor asks his backup officer to go back to the convenience store and get a little more information on what happened at the convenience store. During that time, Connor goes and speaks with the driver of the vehicle, who tells him, hey, just so you know, Graham is a diabetic. He has very low blood sugars right now. And if you guys don't know this, somebody who's diabetic with low blood sugar, they can behave in an erratic manner. They almost act like they're highly intoxicated. It's the best way to describe it. Backup officer comes back, tells Connor there was no armed robbery. This individual ran in there, saw that the line was too long, and then ran back into the vehicle. The driver then explains to Connor, yeah, he went in there trying to buy some orange juice for his diabetes. The line was too long. He came back out, and now we're on our way to another convenience store. At that point, they release Connor. They call for paramedics and to treat his condition. Next day, Graham wakes up. He has some bruising where the handcuffs were placed, where he was pinned against the vehicle, and he filed a excessive use of force complaint against Connor. That went up all the chain, district courts, state courts, and eventually the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court at that point said, based on the information that Connor had at the time of the incident, his actions were reasonable. There was no way for him to know that Graham was diabetic. He was utilizing his training and experience at that time. He believed a violent crime had taken place, and he was doing what he thought was right to prevent another violent crime and to protect the community. So that's the background on that. So a couple things came out of Graham v. Connor. One of the things was the totality triangle. We still use this in the academy to teach new recruits. So up on the top there, we have perceived circumstances. That's the officer's perceived circumstances. So what is the officer observing? What's the officer hearing? What is going on around that officer? He must take all that in before he can make a decision. The next step is going to be on your left there. It's perceived subject's actions. What is the subject doing? Is he being compliant? If so, all we're going to do is talk to this individual, restore peace, go on our way. If he's not being compliant, then there are tools in our belts, in our vests that we can utilize, and I'll just go up the scales, right? So the first thing we can do if somebody is resisting an arrest by thrashing around, pulling away from us, we can use our hands and feet to compel the subject into custody. We also have our pepper spray that we can utilize to help de-escalate the situation. We have things such as the taser that Sergeant DuPont will speak more about later. And we also have a tool called the bowler wrap. Basically, it shoots out a Kevlar cord. It's 7.5 feet long cord, has anchors on each end, and as it shoots out, it spreads out and then wraps around the individual to either secure his arms or secure his legs so he can't run away. Now, if the subject is behaving a level above that, it's becoming assaultive, he's either causing harm to the public or to one of us, then we can utilize other tools such as our batons. Our tasers have two functions currently. The function for an assaultive individual will be the probe deployment. If you guys don't know, our tasers have 2 cartridges, and each cartridge fires 2 probes. Once those probes make connections with the body, it sends out an electric charge that causes the muscles to tense up for 5 seconds, and the individual can't move in those 5 seconds, which gives us a chance to place handcuff on them or to secure them, whatever we need to do to secure the scene. The level above that will be somebody who's causing seriously bodily injury or lethal force. If somebody's attempting to, unfortunately kill somebody, then at that point we can use things such as sidearms, our pistols, or the patrol rifles that we have. I should have mentioned the beanbag. That falls on an assaultive individual. So whenever we can use our baton or a taser, we can also utilize the beanbag. The beanbag does not penetrate the body. It's a projectile about this big, and it hurts, but it won't penetrate the body. It shouldn't cause any serious damage to anybody. It's just kind of causing some pain to get a change of reaction from the individual. The next thing that came out of Graham v. Connor was the SURF standards, and each letter on the acronym SURF stands for something else. So the S, that's the severity of the crime, right? How much interest does the government have in apprehending the subject or this individual, right? If we're talking about something like trespassing, which is a misdemeanor, it's not a serious crime, it's definitely not a violent crime, there's very low interest in the government on apprehending the subject, so the amount of force we utilize in those situations should be minimal to none, right? Some kids break into a school after hours, all we're gonna do is talk to them, escort them out, and if we deem necessary, issue a summons, but most likely nobody's getting arrested in the situation, right? On the other hand, if we go to a armed bank robbery, which is a severe crime, and the government have a higher level of interest in that, we have an individual who's armed, he's dangerous. It is in not only the government's, but also the public's best interest for us to apprehend this individual as quick as possible to keep everybody safe. So in those situations, a higher level of force is authorized as well. The second letter there is the I, that's for the immediacy and severity of the threat. I spoke a little bit about de-escalation earlier, and kind of plays a huge role here is how imminent is the threat to us or to the public, right? If we have an individual who's locked in his room, he's not a threat to anybody but himself, he's kind of having some kind of mental health issues, right? There's no, the threat there is not imminent, right? We can take some time, we can create some distance between us and that individual so we have more time to react. We can call for other resources, right? We have clinicians on duty that we can call to speak with this individual. We can call for negotiators. We can utilize things like drones to keep an eye on them, right? So in those situations, force is definitely not something we are looking to do. It's not something we want to do. And it's the last thing we will be doing in the situation. On the other side, right, summer times we get some fights, especially in the bars. If we arrive on scene and there's an individual actively assaulting somebody, it's not reasonable for us to stand back and give out, verbal commands, be like, sir, please stop, as he's actively causing harm to somebody else. In those situations, we gotta act quickly to prevent any further harm or injury to the public or to that individual. The R there, that's gonna be for level of resistance. So like I spoke earlier, we are authorized to use force to place somebody in custody or detain them. If they're offering us some resistance, again, we can utilize force for those situations. And the level of force we use is based off the level of resistance that individual is giving us. Again, if he's compliant, we're not utilizing force, we're just gonna talk to them and get the situation to calm down. If the individual decides to either run away or fight us, we have different tools and techniques that we can utilize to get the individual in custody. And the F will be for flight risk. Once somebody is under arrest, they're in our custody, they are not allowed to run away from us. So if somebody is attempting to flee from us while they're in custody, again, we are authorized to use our tools and techniques to get them under control. The bowler wrap, which I spoke about earlier, is a great tool for that. If somebody's running away from you, you can utilize the bowler wrap to tie up their legs. That way they can't run, and you can just secure them. The bowler wrap does not cause any pain. It's just a loud pop, kind of scares people a little bit, but it does not offer much pain or any pain at all to the individual. There are other contributing factors when it comes to surf. There's about 20 or 25 of them, but those are the four that we see the most on our career, right? So when we're talking about the totality of the circumstances, we got to think about everything that's happening, right? So factors such as size, age, or condition of the officer matters, right? If we have a female officer who's 5'2" and she has to wrestle with Sergeant DuPont, who's 6'1", 200-something pounds, she will be in a disadvantage. Therefore, it's reasonable for her to use force on him, right? Number of officers and suspects. Again, if you have one officer against 3 suspects, that officer is in a disadvantage. So we must utilize some of our tools to get ourselves back on with some advantage. Duration of the struggle, that's a very important one because the longer the struggle goes on, the more fatigued we get, the more tired we get. There has been multiple cases where officers basically ran out of gas. They've been struggling with somebody for a prolonged period of time. They're winded, they're tired, and the subject ends up taking the officer's firearm or other weapons and using them against the officer. And the final one, it's something that unfortunately we see too frequently, is the use of drugs or alcohol. If somebody's under the influence of things such as cocaine, PCP, meth, they have superhuman strength. They will not get tired and they will not feel pain. So restraining somebody like that, it's quite difficult. And we need those tools to be able to successfully do the job and get the suspect in custody to protect everybody. The last thing I'm going to talk about before I pass it over to Sergeant DuPont so we can go on taser is duty to intervene. Excessive force is a very hot topic for policing nowadays, and it's been for quite a while actually. But not only does our state law and our policy states that we must intervene when we observe an officer using excessive force. So again, I'm just going to use my fellow officers here to make it easier. If Sergeant DuPont observes Sergeant Massey utilizing excessive force or what Sergeant DuPont perceives to be excessive force, he's authorized to remove Sergeant Massey from that situation. All right, and our policy states that must be documented verbally to a supervisor and also written by the end of the shift. When it comes to intervening for excessive force, there is no rank, right? If I see the chief doing something wrong, I'm authorized to stop him, right? Because again, we want to maintain good relationship with the public and we want to make sure everybody goes home safe. That's really the goal of this job for us. Any questions for me?
Does this apply to ICE coming in?
No, so ICE is a federal agency.
What I mean, you can protect us.
For
You can protect civilians of citizens of Falmouth.
Yes.
At least you have the hope to protect us from, they don't abide by any of these. They use excessive force,
Yes.
They're threatening, they throw people to the ground, they're not acting in an honorable way towards the citizens. So I know that you folks do, and I count on you every day, and I'm grateful for you. I'm just concerned about what happens when these people come in, the thugs.
Yeah, so we serve you guys, right? You guys are the reason why we're here. The duty to intervene applies to anybody and everybody. If we see anybody, any agency utilizing some level of extreme force, we are obligated to step in and prevent that from happening.
So we're going to remind you, we're going to bring the microphone. I just want to turn it on.
Thank you. My question is, you're authorized to do this. Are you mandated to step in?
Yes. Well, you're referring to the duty to intervene? Yeah. Yeah, we are mandated. That's a shall, must do. It's not an option.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very instructive. How do you deal with a possible psychiatric problem? You know, somebody who is not necessarily taking drugs or is not resisting, but still has some sort of a manic depressive side, so he's acting crazy. How do you recognize that as a psychiatric problem?
So there's usually signs of some kind of psychiatric problem. Luckily, we have 2 clinicians that work with us, and they are on the road with us. So when we come to situations, we usually try to create some distance between us and that individual to preserve everybody's safety and also secure the scene. Once the clinician comes there, she can speak with that individual, come up with a game plan of what we can do to get him some help. There are things such as a Section 12, which authorizes us to put somebody in a mental health crisis in our custody to bring them to the hospital. Right? So they're not going to jail, they're not being charged for crime. We just place them in custody so we can transport them safely to the hospital where they'll get the help they need.
And just to add, just briefly, we're one of 17 departments in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that's ABLE certified. It's active bystanders and law enforcement, and it's the duty to intervene. And it's not just duty to intervene, but it's also duty to intervene if we're seeing an officer or a supervisor acting out of character. Maybe they're going through a struggle and help, to intervene on their mental health and wellness as well. So I'm proud to say we're one of 17 departments in the state. Some states mandate it for the entire, every department in the state. We're one of 17 right now. I think we're going to start a trend. It's a great program out of Georgetown University. It costs this much money, and it's great training. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Chief.
Sergeant, that was an excellent presentation, but you didn't mention dogs. Do you ever bring in dogs, train dogs to
Yeah.
quiet a situation down?
So currently, the town doesn't own any canines, but we do work closely with Mashpee and the sheriffs. They have narcotics and patrol dogs and also tracking dogs. So in a situation that might require a dog, we do call them. The chief is working on getting Falmouth their own dogs, not only for drugs, but also for patrol. So, we utilize dogs. I believe it was last week, we had an individual who committed a crime. He fled from the scene, and the dog was able to track him to exactly where he was. We can also utilize them to de-escalate the situation. We understand that dogs have a very, they have a presence that causes people to change their attitude. Yes.
We've had actually 3 terrible fatals, and 2 involving teenagers. And in one of the situations, we brought in comfort dogs to Falmouth High School to help with the kids. So that's another program that I would like to implement here in Falmouth. I'm actually, hopefully this winter, we're going to be getting a drug dog. I call them floppy ear dogs. They're Labradors, so we won't be doing tracking and apprehension, but they sniff people, where shepherds are a little bit more aggressive. So basically, we'll have a dog that be able to go on the boat, be able to go into school, be able to deal with our large crowds to try to combat some of the narcotics. Hopefully you follow us on social media. You see we had a very big arrest last week, a real bad drug dealer in town. If you're dealing that poison in Falmouth, we will arrest you. We know we're not going to arrest our way out of it, but we're sure going to try real hard. Again, proud of my staff for all the hard work they did on that. And to those drug dealers out there, we're going to seize whatever we can, your cars, your money, and everything else to put back into the program. How am I paying for this K-9 program? Believe it or not, it's not out of your tax dollars. It's going to be out of asset forfeiture. So those monies are going to go back into, again, law enforcement activities that are going to try to keep people safe and keep this poison the best we can out of Falmouth, because it's here and it's bad.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks for your time, guys.
Good morning. I'm Sergeant DuPont, along with Sergeant Cardozo. I'm a use of force instructor and a taser instructor. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to talk to you folks about the taser that we have and about the taser that we would like to get and why we need it. This is our taser right here. It's called the Taser X2. It's empty. I took the cartridges, the probes out, and the battery out. So it's just right now it's a block of plastic. We've had this for close to 15 years. At the time we got it, this was state-of-the-art technology. This is now obsolete. I went to a training about a year and a half ago from departments all over the country. I was one of just a handful of people that still use this. Every other department had upgraded. Since we got these, there have been a taser called the X7, and now they're on the Taser 10. There were over 150 people in my training. It was a training by Taser. Again, I was one of the only departments to still use this. How this works is there are 2 cartridges, 1 for each side. Okay? Do you just have them?
Do you want a microphone?
Yeah, no. So these are what the cartridges look like. They're black squares. Okay? In both of these, there are 2 probes. One comes out straight, and the other one comes down at an angle. And how this taser works is something called NMI. It's neuromuscular incapacitation. Essentially, it just locks up your muscles. And for this taser to work, you need to have about 12 inches of space between each probe. Most of our interactions with people where we have to use force is very close. There's a lot of shortcomings, unfortunately, with this, where sometimes it's ineffective. The new taser, it's called Taser 10. It looks very similar to this, but you have 10 single probes. And so if we're up close, you still have to use 2. You can use 1, and then you can just angle the taser down a little bit and get your 12 inches. I have been tased multiple times. When I tell people that I'm a taser instructor, they ask me, what does it feel like? And my answer has always been the same. It feels like I have a leg cramp in the middle of the night when I'm laying in bed, and I wake up and I go, ah, that's what it feels like. After I get tased, I get up, I go about my day like nothing happened. We still have 5 seconds to handcuff. So Sergeant Cardozo and I have put a lot of effort into our training and education to our officers for tasers. And we teach them, if you get the NMI, which means the muscles are locked up where the fight is over, to go in and handcuff immediately. So that way, after the 5 seconds, the subject can't get back up and continue to fight. We want to resolve everything peacefully, as much as we can. But again, the taser, it's a wonderful tool, and we need to get new ones. Our shelf life is done with these. A lot of these are broken. I have a pile where I can't use them anymore. Axon has stopped supporting the X2, which means if they break, we used to be able to send them back and fix them. Now we can't do that anymore. We recently got Axon body cameras. So with the new tasers, in our taser holster, there's a sensor. So whenever an officer has to use their taser, the body cameras will automatically come on. So everything is recorded. Everything is time, date stamped. I'm a big proponent of taser. My shift used the taser a couple weeks ago at a bar fight. Before that, we had to use the taser in a beach parking lot. This is something that we need. It de-escalates the situation. It gives us an option not to use a firearm. And the taser is a successful tool. The technology advancement since we've got these in over 15 years is tremendous. We still have a couple probes for training and for duty. We're not going to be able to get additional probes going forward. After next year, we can't buy any more probes. So we can't use these, our current tasers. Does anybody have any questions about tasers?
So the warrant article for November town meeting, if anyone is a town meeting member here, I think it's for 130-something thousand year one, because it involves some training, and then it's 88,000 a year for the next 4 years. So it's a 5-year commitment. They are very expensive, but just like you'll see, we're putting in for new portable radios. You know, we need to be able to communicate for your safety and for our safety, and we want to be able to have a less lethal option. Like I said, we're so happy you supported us for the firearms upgrades we have, and we'll talk about some more in a minute. But we really don't want to use them if we don't have to. And if you remember, a few years ago, we had 2 officers that were shot right here in Falmouth. So this training and having these tools is absolutely critical for your safety and our safety. And if you say it can't happen here, it can. And we have to be prepared. You know, we have the guardian mindset here in Falmouth. I'm very proud of that. But when it's time to flip that switch to warrior, got 3 really capable warriors right here. And then once the threat is done, we're back to the guardian mindset again. And like Sergeant Cardoso very eloquently stated, we have seconds to make these critical decisions, and then Monday morning quarterbacked by attorneys for years before we resolve some of these issues, when, in my opinion, we've done absolutely nothing wrong, but that's the system we live in today. And we have to realize we do live in a litigious society, and we have to be prepared. And how do we do that? Training, 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 training. The very best in training possible. And like I said, I'll put our firearms team and our self-defense instructors next to anybody. You're very fortunate here in Falmouth. You've got a phenomenal police department, and really honored and proud to be a part of it.
Where do you normally aim the taser?
So the preferred target zone, I guess, is how Axon puts it, is in the back, all the way down to your calves. If you're facing somebody, it is like the belly down to the legs. Not the head, not the chest, not anywhere sensitive. So, I mean, you have a lot of space in the back, essentially the entire back, the front of your belly, and then your legs.
I want to thank both of you for your presentations, your comments. And Chief, I would add tools to the training. That you can train, but if you don't have the tools to use, you're kind of behind the 8 ball here. And that the case that you make is a perfectly reasonable one, Sergeant. And my hope is that the town will make the investment consistent with the firearms, consistent with the body cameras, consistent with the body armor.
So part of the budget request does include tools and training tools. So TASER and the state came out with a policy, a law, stating that we must train for a minimum of 4 hours every year to keep our certifications. So part of what we're requesting is the appropriate tools so we can train on, because part of that training requires scenario-based training. Currently, we don't have a way to do that. We have kind of a target sheet where we can aim at the taser and deploy it, so for training purpose. But part of the budget, we're hoping to get a taser training suit. So I myself, I'll be in that suit, I'll be playing the subject, and I'll be giving Sergeant Massey a scenario and see how he reacts, see if he knows how to utilize the taser, how to aim the taser, and that kind of stuff.
Just quick question, thank you. You said that the taser freezes the muscles. The heart is a muscle, so how would it affect the heart?
So there's something called the dart to heart ratio. That is, what I teach the guys is you don't go for the chest. The further away the probe is away from the chest, the less likely there is of any issues with your heart. There have also been multiple tests done by Axon, which is way beyond my expertise in the scientific stuff. It does not affect the heart. So I guess that's why.
So the research is talking about, they basically got subjects to sit and they hold on to a metal rod and they slowly increase the electric charge on the electric rod to see at what point does it become painful and at what point that individual can no longer let go of that metal rod. They found that before there's any damage to the heart, to the organs, there's a 10 times ratio, right? So when you can't let go, you need to go 10 times higher than that to cause any damage to the heart or to the organs. So the taser has that 10 times margin of safety. You know, no tools in its stable is risk-free. They all have a risk, but the safety ratio of the taser is significantly high. The odds of causing any heart issue or organ issue it's really minimal. Along with how the taser works, the electric charge, not to get too scientific here, but your brain communicates with your muscles through, your nervous system. It sends an electric signal to your muscles, telling your muscles what to do. The taser mimics that signal. So now your brain's sending a signal, the taser is sending the same signal, so your muscles don't know what to do, and that's why you lock up. It's not because the electric charge is too high, it's not because it's too painful, it's because your muscles can't decipher that signal that's receiving.
To add a little bit of science to it. Ma'am, think of the cells in your body as little batteries. That between the inside and the outside of the cell is about 70 millivolts, very small. Your muscle cells the same way. So when you make a move, you decide to move, neurons will release a chemical that will bind to the muscle cell and open up little gates. Calcium comes in, you depolarize, which is what we're talking about here, and you get a contraction. And one of the reasons for staying away from the heart is you don't know what the hypertensive condition state of that individual is, right? So, but in aiming for the back, in aiming for the chest or the legs, right, there's a startling aspect to this as well. Oh, what happened? And then, you're immobilized, and that gives them the 5 seconds that they're talking about to go ahead and restrain the individual, cuff or however. Okay, so just to try to help along with a little bit deeper understanding.
So on Sergeant Massey, you'll see on his equipment right here, this is pepper spray that he has in there. So we've all been pepper sprayed, we've all been tased. I can tell you if I had to choose, I would much rather be tased than pepper spray, to be quite honest with you. It's a very, very effective tool. It does hurt. I did scream very loudly. But like I said, 5 seconds later, you go about your day. There's absolutely no residual effects to it. So I don't know if you guys want to explain.
So my name's Sergeant Massey, one of the firearms instructors. Today we're kind of showcasing some of the newer platforms that we've implemented in the department. Some of our gear over time has aged out. One of the big things that we did recently was we bought new handguns with the red dots. Red dots are kind of the future of firearms. You'll remember the old firearms that didn't have this big boxy thing. What this does is it emits a light onto a piece of glass inside the box here, and where you put that red dot, which is what you see on the glass, you put that on your target, and that's where your round is going to impact. This one here is this is our main duty gun. It's called a Glock 47 with a red dot. Our detectives and admin carry something that's very similar. It's a Glock 43X. Also has a red dot. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact. It does the same thing. It emits a red light onto a piece of glass. You fire a round, and wherever that red dot is where the round will impact. This is a little bit more, like I said, compact. So our plainclothes officers, our admin guys, the chief probably carries his in the office every day, but it's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit less bulky. We talked about the taser. This is something you'll see I have on my belt here. I have a holster for the taser, and every officer has a taser on them on duty. Sergeant Cardoso is passing down the red dot that is typically on the rifle here. This is our patrol rifle. Recently we got these suppressors here, which is it's a big investment. It's good for a lot of reasons. When we have to deploy these are very loud. And if we had to deploy it, let's say in a building or even outside, they're much louder than a typical handgun. And the suppressors don't add anything to accuracy or anything like that, but it's protecting bystanders as well as the officers that are using these. It's protecting our hearing. And it's not like in Hollywood where you can barely hear the round. You still hear it, it's just significantly dampened. It's not causing that hearing damage, which can be very long term. Also, we have these. These are the less lethal shotguns. It's exactly the same as a regular shotgun. We just switched them out so that they have the red handles here, or the orange handles. We also put a light on it with a laser. You'll see the laser there. That's where that laser hits on a target, is where your beanbag round will land. They fire it's a 12 gauge round it's like a bag just filled with lead.
Can I have one thing?
Yeah.
So just a couple of things. We just added that piece of equipment to our patrol rifles suppressors, and one of the reasons is, obviously if one of our officers has to utilize that, we're going to have some mental health counseling, things we have to deal with if, God forbid, we have to shoot somebody with it. But at least we won't have a physical impairment due to hearing loss because of that. So it's very important. Sergeant Cardoso's on the regional SWAT team, the Law Enforcement Council Cape Lec team. And him and, I think we have 4 officers on now, but him and his partner, there were 2 of them when I first started on there. And I think they were the only 2 operators that did not have suppressors. So it's this industry standard now, it really is. So the rifles were newer when I got here, but we didn't have the suppressors. So one of the things we did was we went out and asked you folks for some money to buy some suppressors, and you said yes. And again, I can't say thank you enough to this town and the community for the overwhelming support that public safety gets. And I include fire and DPW in there. It really is, and like the gentleman said, you're only as good as the tools that you have. And we have really good tools. Why? We want to go home, at the end of the shift. We want you to go home. We want people to be safe. We're human beings just like you. And, a lot of times, you hear some negative comments towards law enforcement, but it's a difficult job in this environment that we live in. Why we have to have able and do to intervene in the training that we do have. And I'm proud to say that these 3 officers here, they provide phenomenal training and support to their subordinates, to me, to our captains, our deputy chief, our lieutenants. And I want you to know you should be proud of them, of what they're doing every day. And you can see there's a lot of equipment here. You know, flashlights, handcuffs, magazines for his pistol, body camera. The reason why you see the traditional gun belts, you're seeing less of them, it's not that we want to look like SWAT operators. It's really bad for our backs. You got 40, 50 pounds of equipment on you. So we took it off their belts, we put it on, and we're seeing health and wellness dividends based on that.
My couple comments. First of all, I thank the officers and you, Chief, for coming out today. I mean, this is the sort of thing that ought to happen in every community on a regular basis, having the police sit and talk with citizens about issues. I mean, and that building up that community, rebuilding the community and police relationship that's been lost in many respects today is critically important. You guys have got one of the toughest jobs out there, period. Toughest job I've seen in my lifetime. I know I look youthful, but a little bit older than that, so. But truly today, you are oftentimes placed in no-win situations. And it's harder and harder today because of the perception that the police are the bad guys and that they're there to do bad things. Now, having said that, let me just say one other thing. I was a district court judge for 20 plus years, and I can't tell you how many times I witnessed situations where police officers were involved in situations which, if they had just used a little bit of a word you mentioned earlier, de-escalation, the situation would have been dramatically different. Too often times, and we have many of them still today in police departments all across the state, across the country, where the officer's approach is not de-escalation. It's kind of a macho, paramilitary sort of approach, which tends to escalate situations that could be easily de-escalated. Now, I'm not saying that in many cases in every case that's possible, because you've got mentally ill people and you've got some people who are really dangerous characters, but so oftentimes de-escalation is what's going to change the situation for the better. But part of it is just you guys coming out talking to community people about who you are and what you're trying to do, and I think that would also help on the other end. Last point, there's an ad running on the radio now, which I hear all the time say, it's police officer, law enforcement saying, comply now, complain later, which makes a lot of sense, and it talks about it'll de-escalate. But that same training needs to be given to some police departments about de-escalation now, and then complain later, because there's too much of escalation rather than de-escalation. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. That's critical in so many situations where you wouldn't have to use some of the force you have to use.
And what really is critical is hiring. And we've hired close to 30 officers in my just over 2 years here, and we promoted 9. 3 of them are with you here today. And we've rescinded conditional offers for lateral transfers. We hire really, really hard to hopefully manage a little bit easier. You folks deserve it. I've got a potential lateral coming in tomorrow. He's going to attend roll call at 7 o'clock. Absolute rock star. And that's what it's about. It's about trying to attract the very best and brightest. He's college educated, but they're also, have the training and the ability to take care of things when it goes south and bad things happen. So, but you're right. It really is about really being able to identify certain things. When we talk about that diabetic, person, being able to, to notch it back when you have to, And I'm very proud to say that's what these folks do on a daily basis. I mean, I had an officer this summer, kicked in the face. We've had, officers that have been shot and dealt with terrible things. Sadly, not everyone listens to us. They don't comply. And they're violent. And you need to be prepared for that and knowing where to get them the resources later. In a lot of cases, we deal with mental health. Literally every shift, every day. Our clinicians, I came here, I had a clinician in Westboro. I'm going, they want me to hire 2 clinicians. I could have 3. It's very, very busy here. The substance abuse and the mental health, domestic violence, it's bad. And it's not just Falmouth, it's everywhere. And I don't want you to feel unsafe because I live here. I live in East Falmouth where some very violent crime happened. over a 2-year period, 5 homicides. And you're very safe. And like I said, when you're sleeping at night, know he's out there protecting you with his crew of men and women that are really committed to public safety. They didn't take this job for health insurance and pay details, which some people do in this world. They took this job to be guardians, to make a difference in Falmouth and the region as a regional SWAT team. It's not just about Falmouth. You know, our drone unit and canines, when we have them, they're going to go all over the Cape and off Cape because I've got big plans. We've just started, as far as I'm concerned, as a temporary caretaker of this agency. And we've got a lot of work to do, and I look forward to working with these gentlemen for years to come. And again, thank you very much. I know we went long today. This is a good one. You guys did good.
We got one more.
Just real quick on your comment there. We find that the best way to train officers to de-escalate situations is by training. And I'd like to thank Chief Lourie, town manager, you folks, because the amount of training we have received in the last few years has definitely gone up. Sergeant DuPont and I, we run the defensive tactics for the department. So every year, officers have to go there and get trained on defensive tactics. It used to be a 4-hour training every year. Now it's an 8-hour training. And with those extra 4 hours, what we started implementing was role-playing scenarios. So either me or him, we play the bad guys, we come up with a scenario. And usually the scenario is planned out. It's like, hey, I'm gonna act this way. If an officer does this, I'm gonna do that, right? And I'll tell you guys, because one scenario we had last year was I was supposed to be hiding a knife, and I was waiting for that officer to let his guard down so I could fake stab him. But he did such a good job talking to me that I just gave up. It never got to that point of escalating because he just did such an amazing job talking to me. So that's really the goal of our trainings. Most of the scenarios we had, I want to say probably 90% of them, could be achieved through de-escalation. We definitely put a couple in there that couldn't, because reality is not every situation can be de-escalated. Mental illness, drugs, and some people, they've made up their mind the moment they woke up that morning, there's no change in their mind. But with the help of the chief and you folks, we have more training now, so especially as officers come out of the academy, we can really start giving them the training they need to be successful at de-escalating and handle those situations.
And he brings up a good point. I don't talk about it as much as I probably should. One of the big things initially when I took over here was I tripled the training budget. I felt we needed to have more training that's outside of just your yearly in-service training. You know what I mean? Specialty training. People have said to me all the time, well, you can't reward government public employees. You can. You reward them by providing specialty assignments, and we've got 100 of them. You reward them by training opportunities and overtime opportunities doing things they like to do. With our clinicians, we do patrols. They can take comp time or they get paid overtime to go out with the clinicians in plain clothes. Why? They're more approachable. When we're dealing with people with mental health, we have a very large unhoused population here in Falmouth, and they're not going on that 911 call. They're not going on that nuisance alarm call. The clinicians are actually scheduling to go out and to help people in times of crisis to try to get them the help they need. So, at the end of the day, training is a huge component to rewarding your employees. And what's the side benefit? Is you folks get an enhanced level of service because when they bring that training back and deploy it, what they've learned in class. I've got an instructor coming in, flying in from Dallas, Texas, from that area. He's a leader training instructor. They're not having leader this year. So I have all my sergeants and all the officers that took the promotional exam. They're going to be going to this training. There's 13 of them. It costs $9,500, but it is a phenomenal training that they're going to have tools for their toolbox to better serve you folks and better supervise their staff. It's very important, and that'll be a 2.5-day training in October. It's money well spent. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, no problem. All right, do you guys have any questions about, go ahead.
Sergeant, you mentioned you got tased multiple times. You seem like a nice guy. Why do they keep tasing you?
As an instructor, this is a serious, as an instructor, I feel that I should get tased to have some validity to what I'm instructing. And when the new technology comes out, I want to stay up to date on feeling, what I'm experiencing, so that when people ask me what's it like, I can continue to teach them. Thank you. Any other questions?